It was supposed to be just sex. Just a reckless, fleeting weekend in a cabin where the world couldn't see us, couldn't judge us, couldn't remind us that what we had was dangerous. But then he showed up at my door, suitcase in hand, eyes filled with something that terrified me more than hope. I should have slammed the door. I should have told him that what we had was nothing, that the fire we started in the woods burned out the second we drove back into the city. But instead, I froze, staring at him like he was both the cure and the sickness that had been rotting me from the inside. Ethan Clark wasn't supposed to matter. He was supposed to be the distraction. The guy I met by accident at a bar just off campus, charming, infuriating, bold in a way I envied but hated. He had this laugh that dared people to judge him, this way of leaning in too close, of staring too deep, like he could peel back layers you'd spent years burying. And Nathan Hayes, was the guy who never let anyone get that close. Not in a town like ours. Not in a family like mine. Yet here he was, standing on my porch in broad daylight, when any one of my neighbors could glance over and see two men locked in a moment that felt far too dangerous to last. "What the hell are you doing here?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. His lips curved, not in that cocky grin he'd worn all weekend, but in something fragile, something breaking. "You told me it didn't mean anything," he said. "But it did. You know it did." The weekend had been a blur of firelight, whiskey, and sheets tangled around bodies too scared to admit what they wanted. We'd set the rules before we touched each other. No names outside of first names. No promises. No strings attached. Because that's what made it safe. That's what made it survivable. But I should have known Ethan would be the one to shatter the rules. "I told you," I said, keeping my voice low, as if the walls had ears. "We can't. Not here. Not like this." Ethan stepped closer, suitcase abandoned on the porch. His hands trembled, just slightly, but his voice carried steady. "I don't care about here. I don't care what people say, Nathan. I care about you. And damn him. Damn him for saying the one thing I'd wanted to hear my entire life, but couldn't let myself believe. Because where I grew up, men didn't fall for men. They didn't kiss them under the stars. They didn't whisper confessions against their skin. And they sure as hell didn't show up in the middle of the suburbs, asking for something as reckless as love. I closed my eyes, but the images rushed back anyway. Ethan's head thrown back in laughter as I burned the marshmallows on the fire. His hand brushing mine when he thought I wouldn't notice. The quiet, heavy silence after the last night, when neither of us wanted to be the first to admit it was over. And the way he kissed me then, like he already knew he was going to break the rule, even if I didn't. "I can't do this," I whispered. But the words sounded like a lie even to me. Ethan tilted his head, stepping so close I could smell the faint trace of smoke still lingering on his hoodie from the cabin fire pit. "You already are doing this. You've been doing this since the second you kissed me." My chest tightened, because he was right. And it terrified me. For as long as I could remember, I'd played by the rules. I dated the girls everyone thought I should. I joined the football team, kept my grades just high enough to get by, and wore the mask of the perfect son so tightly I forgot who was underneath. But Ethan? He ripped it off in a single weekend. And now I didn't know if I could put it back on. "Say it," Ethan whispered, eyes locked on mine. "Say you don't want me and I'll leave. But don't lie to me, Nathan. Don't lie to yourself." His words cut deeper than I wanted to admit. Because if I told him I didn't want him, he would leave. He would walk away, suitcase in hand, and I'd be safe again. Safe in the prison I'd built for myself. But if I told him the truth, I didn't know what would happen. The silence stretched between us, heavy and fragile, like glass on the verge of shattering. And then, somewhere behind me, I heard the faint sound of a car door slamming. A neighbor stepping outside. A reminder that we weren't invisible anymore. My blood turned cold. Ethan must have seen it in my eyes, because he glanced past me, to the street, to the houses with their manicured lawns and American flags fluttering in the wind. And for the first time, I saw fear flicker across his face. But instead of stepping back, he reached for my hand. And I let him. The touch was electric. Wrong and right all at once. My pulse thundered in my ears, my heart screaming louder than the fear. I squeezed his hand back. Just once. Just enough to let him know I wasn't ready to let him go. And in that moment, the world could have been burning around us, and I wouldn't have cared. Because Ethan Clark was standing on my porch, begging for my heart. And God help me, I was ready to give it to him. I thought taking his hand was the bravest thing I'd ever done. Turns out it was just the beginning of the war. Because the moment Ethan stepped inside my house, everything I'd been hiding from the whispers, the expectations, the suffocating judgment came crashing down around us. The following week was hell. Rumors spread fast in small towns, and it didn't take long for people to notice Ethan's car parked outside my house more than once. My father stopped speaking to me at the dinner table. My mother tried, but her smiles were tight, rehearsed, as if she was playing the part of supportive, but didn't know her lines. On campus, my teammates threw around slurs like grenades, laughing as if I wasn't in the room. And Ethan tried to stand tall, to act like it didn't hurt, but I could see the cracks forming. One night, he showed up at my door again, eyes red from holding it in all day. "Is this worth it to you?" he asked, voice breaking. "Because if it's not, tell me now. Tell me before I drown in all of this." I wanted to say yes. I wanted to tell him he was worth every bruise, every whisper, every slammed door at home. But fear twisted the words in my throat. So I stayed silent. And Ethan left. The days after felt hollow. I went through the motions practice, class, meals with my family, but it was like moving through fog. Every place I went, I saw him. The cabin we'd shared lived in my chest like a ghost I couldn't exorcise. I told myself this was safer. That maybe letting him go was the only way to save him from the ugliness of my world. But at night, when I lay awake staring at the ceiling, I knew I was lying. The truth was I was a coward. Weeks passed before I saw him again. It was a Friday night, the kind of crisp autumn evening where the air smells of bonfires and fallen leaves. I was driving past the community center when I spotted him outside, his guitar case slung over his shoulder. He looked different, stronger somehow, even though his eyes still carried that same sadness. He was heading toward a local open mic night, a space he told me once felt like the only place he could breathe. I parked before I could talk myself out of it. Inside, the room buzzed with low chatter, fairy lights strung across the ceiling. When Ethan stepped on stage, the world quieted. He adjusted the mic, fingers brushing the strings of his guitar, and then he started to play. It wasn't just music. It was confession. His voice cracked in places, raw and unpolished, but every lyric carried a truth I'd been too afraid to speak. "I met someone," he sang, eyes fixed on a spot in the crowd that felt like it could only be me, "and I let him go. But he's the only home I've ever known." My chest burned, and before I could stop myself, I was standing. People turned as I walked forward, whispers rippling like wind across water. But I didn't care anymore. For the first time in my life, I didn't care. I reached the edge of the stage just as Ethan lowered his guitar. His eyes widened, shock flickering into something fragile and unguarded. "I'm sorry," I said, loud enough for the whole room to hear. I was scared. I let everyone else's voices drown out mine. But I can't keep pretending. Not when I'm in love with you. The room fell silent. Ethan stared at me, his throat bobbing as he swallowed hard. And then slowly he smiled. That real smile, the one that reached his eyes. The one I hadn't seen since the cabin. He set the guitar down and stepped off the stage. And when his hand found mine, it was steady, sure. The backlash came, of course. There were stares, harsh words, more fights with my father than I could count. But there were also moments I never expected. My sister, who wrapped me in a hug so tight I couldn't breathe, whispering that she'd known all along and just wanted me to be happy. A professor who pulled me aside after class, quietly telling me about his own partner of 20 years. Strangers at the open mic who clapped louder than anyone else when Ethan and I walked in together the next week. It wasn't easy. Still isn't. But for the first time, I felt like I wasn't carrying the weight alone. Months later, Ethan and I returned to the cabin. The snow had started to fall, soft flakes catching in his hair as he dragged me toward the porch where it all began. "You remember the rules we made?" he asked, grinning. "No names, no promises, no strings," I said, rolling my eyes. "Yeah." He took my hand, pulling me closer. "I think it's time we broke all of them." I laughed, but my chest tightened with something warm, something steady, because this time I wasn't afraid. "I love you," I said, the words falling easy now, like they'd been waiting all along. Ethan's eyes softened. "Good, because I'm not going anywhere." And then he kissed Meslo, sure, with the kind of certainty that didn't need rules. The world outside could keep its judgment, its whispers, its walls. Because here, in the quiet of the falling snow, with Ethan's hand in mine, I finally understood what it meant to be free. Not free from fear, not free from struggle, but free to love. And that was enough. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.